Welcome to the Swing Left Nebraska podcast that's all about energizing communities, advocating for change, and making a difference in the great state of Nebraska. We'll dive deep into the heart of Nebraska's progressive movement, exploring the stories, strategies, and initiatives that are shaping the political landscape. We're here to amplify the voices of candidates, local activists, and community leaders who are fighting for a more equitable, inclusive, and prosperous Nebraska. Swing Left Nebraska is your go to resource for staying informed about key issues, upcoming elections, and how you can get involved. Whether you're a seasoned organizer, a concerned citizen, or someone who's looking to make a difference for the first time, we've got you covered. Get ready to be inspired and let's embark on this incredible journey together. Hello there. My name is Leah, and I want to thank you for joining Sydney and me as we unpack the unicameral. Today, we'll be discussing a few topics, including an update on Nebraska taxes, LB 1402, State Senator Steve Halloran's reformation, changes to the Nebraska parole system, the Blue Dot, and LB 575. We have a lot to cover, so let's do a show. All right, Sydney, it is such a joy to welcome you back to the Swing Left Nebraska podcast. This has been a heavy and emotional week, to say the least, but let's start off with a topic that I feel like you have a good grasp on. I am not the best when it comes to this. This is the thing that rhymes with schmaxes, taxes. If you could give our audience an update of what went down last week and what to expect and what's on the horizon when it comes to taxes in Nebraska.
Thank you for talking with me today and catching up again this week. I really appreciate you so much. And I will tell you, we would not have enough time to talk about what is going on in the legislature with taxes. To me, it's disappointing that we're down to the final days like this, and it is still such a question mark, like where we're going in our state, the actual, vision for our state when we talk about appropriations and revenue is lacking leadership. And when I say that, I am not talking partisanship. I'm just saying that we have a governor who has been trying to shepherd through whatever type of package, and it's been behind the scenes and not involving all the stakeholders. And I think we're seeing now the result of that. You can't just ram things through the Nebraska legislature. We need the transparency, and we need the stakeholders and everyone involved coming together, rolling up their sleeves and trying to really get to the bottom of some of these issues and to try to find solutions and not just take whack-a-mole type of approach. And there have been some good things that passed this week. It's a little bit overshadowed by some of the news and some of the other things that have the debate and things that have happened on the floor of the legislature and the things that are happening outside of the legislature. But there were some good bills that actually advanced. And one I've really been following closely is Senator DeBoer's bill 904, I think is the number. And that is the one regarding childcare reimbursement rates. It includes Senator Wishart's intergenerational care facility incentive grant program. It's tailored, trimmed, I should say, type of program, but I think it'll be something that we should really invest in and see how it goes. And then there's also Medicaid managed care access investment. There's things in that bill that are, I think, really good. And I'm glad that has been moving through. We've seen some things that are moving. And it's been disappointing, though, with the revenue and appropriation packages that they've been really last minute. The revenue package that they put to the floor had to pull back. We're waiting for fiscal notes. It's day 57 out of 60. And we'll just really have to see what they come forward with, having worked on it over the weekend. We're hearing that the governor is saying we're going to do a special session to deal with property taxes. What they've tried to do is put some one-time funds, sweeping through some of these accounts and applying that to what they call property tax relief. But it's really not going to solve underlying issues. One of the things that some ideas have even been floated to address the income tax rate cuts that happened last year for corporate and individuals. So just a reminder to everyone that the legislature last year passed a bill that will put income tax rate cuts over time and only for the top brackets. Just make sure to get that square that everyone understands. It's only for the top brackets, and they even collapsed the top brackets as well. And that has really put a hole in the Nebraska state budget. When we talk about sales tax and that it is regressive, when we're talking about exemptions and still leaving some particular industries are being exempted is difficult topic and project and one that takes serious consideration. It takes real work and trying to smash this all together in the last 3 days of the session. It's just really not how I think we should be passing policy in Nebraska. So there's a lot of good in there that's been moving forward. I'm excited about some of these bills, and even though some of the exciting ones were put into programs where they're sunsetting, I hope that we can see good results and that future legislatures will come and fund on an ongoing basis, like things like the prenatal plus program. I'm really hoping we see Senator Frederickson's priority regarding childcare incentives for childcare workers. I think those types of things, if we can move those through the legislature and then get good results and have future legislators focus on it, then we can really try and do some good things for working Nebraskans in the long term.
That would be the goal. So we will continue to keep our eyes on that and provide updates as they come. Now, the author of Nebraska's new Opportunity Scholarship Act says she knows that the state tax credit for funding students attending private K through 12 schools risks being objected by voters in November. That's why Senator Luann Linehan of Omaha and other supporters of the school choice law drafted several bills this year to preserve the heart of the program regardless of the election outcome. So let's basically not listen to what the people want. Let's just draft bills for what we want. Each proposal would offset the cost of private K through 12 education with state dollars. Recently, Linehan settled on legislative bill 1402 as the session's vehicle for the changes. She originally designed the bill to shift the scholarship program created by the Opportunity Scholarships Act to the state treasurer's office and away from nonprofit scholarship granting group. Her latest amendment to LB 1402, Amendment 1306, clarifies that school choice supporters intend to directly allocate state funds to private school scholarships instead of steering them to outside scholarship organizations, essentially eliminating the middleman. So I know you have a lot to say on this topic. I know our listeners are eager to hear what your thoughts are on this.
We're hearing that this will be on the floor of the legislature on Tuesday morning. I am not sure because I'm talking with you on Sunday. Speaker Arch has not put the agenda out yet. Again, when we're talking, Tuesday is day 57. So it's really make or break. We're going to get this legislation heard. Obviously, I am adamantly opposed to LB 1402, and I'm actually very, very concerned that Speaker Arch has said that particular bill would come under his quote unquote social or controversial threshold for cloture, and that it would be at a reduced requirement for hours of debate instead of the traditional 8 hours on general and then followed by 4 and 2. This would be on a 4-2-1 type of schedule. And it's shocking to me. It just really is. This is an appropriations where we're talking about our state's dollars and appropriating them. I don't know where the social kind of controversial definition, but it also, in a really major way, we need to keep remembering that this bill is something Senator Linehan tried to pass year after year. And senators of all parties over time, they were people who were Republicans as well, resisted public dollars for private schools because Nebraska's constitution is clear on this. That is not allowed. It also is, again, putting public dollars to private schools, and there's no protection in there regarding discrimination against these schools accepting all students. And specifically, we're talking about disabled students, specific religion, LGBTQ status, things like that. There's also the piece that this particular bill is to replace law passed last year that so many Nebraskans disagreed with that they took it to themselves to try to get it on the ballot in November to repeal. The repeal process and that whole petition is something that is a high bar because it is such a serious thing to consider. And that was something that over 117,000 Nebraskans came together to sign that petition to get it on the ballot because we feel so strongly that LB 753 is bad policy. And for the legislature to consider passing a different law to end run that petition process is against democracy. And I think it's a very serious matter and one that people are concerned no matter what party. I'm an independent, you know that. There's Democrats, there's Republicans. I had people that signed the petition who kids or grandkids go to private schools. There are people of all backgrounds, especially when you talk about rural Nebraskans who completely understand the difficulty regarding private schools in their communities. They don't have them. Just the majority have no access even to these potential schools, at least that are there now. And it is just unbelievable to me that the senators would consider doing such a disrespectful thing to Nebraska voters and to their constituents. We had over 117,000 people sign this petition in 3 short months. There was a 90-day time limit. And so that means we very likely would have had many more signatures if we'd had more time. And I don't even want to get into the whole process where we had really information and all of that kind of stuff from the organizations that came in to oppose our petition process, which I believed was undemocratic as well. But one of the things that I would like to say is that if Senator Linehan knows or has the feeling or the polling or whatever kind of premonition that the repeal process would be something Nebraskans vote for, why would any of the other senators who aren't term limited consider themselves making a decision to end run voters on this? I think they should really look deep, search their hearts, the oath they took to represent their constituents. And we had votes from all across the state. The requirement from the Secretary of State is a certain number of voter signatures total. And then you also had to have a certain number of voters from a certain number of counties across the state. And we exceeded those numbers handily. I truly hope the senators will do the right thing and vote no on LB 1402 and let Nebraskans decide. Let Nebraskans vote in November.
I agree. So we will have an update for that vote for you next week. But fingers crossed, but also, as Sydney always reminds us, reach out to your senator and let them know how you feel about this. If you have the feels, be sure to express them with your senator. Now, an update the legislature's top legislative leaders opted Wednesday to formally reprimand State Senator Steve Halloran after he inserted colleagues' names into the reading of an explicit rape scene 2 weeks ago. The 9 member executive board, which acts as a human resources arm of the state legislative branch, voted unanimously to release results of a formal investigation into Hastings State Senator Steve Halloran's March 18th actions, which he read a committee hearing transcript regarding Lucky, a 1999 memoir of Alice Sebold that recounts Sebold's experience of sexual violence at age 18. Halloran repeatedly interjected other senators' names into the reading of he interjected Kavanaugh's name. The executive board voted 8-1 to formally reprimand Halloran in an internal letter rather than an advanced legislative resolution 335 from State Senator Michaela Kavanaugh of Omaha. The resolution called for the legislator to formally censure Halloran for his comments. So it is nice to see that there are some consequences, but I feel like there could have been more. What are your thoughts?
The whole process has been so very disappointing. And I'm someone who comes from an HR background. So it's difficult for me sometimes because as an employer, there were times when I have fired people for conduct that would be harassing. their colleagues. I believe in free speech. I think Senator Halloran has the right to free speech. The accountability for that, though, and whether the speech actually becomes harassment is something that the executive board needed to take lead on. And this process has been handled as far as the communication. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh on the floor of the legislature was visibly upset the other day when she commented when this came out from the executive board, she'd not been updated, hadn't been discussed or contacted at all. And I don't understand how that process worked if they didn't talk with everyone that had been impacted. That to me is very disappointing, and then to be surprised with the results like that is not how you would want to treat anyone with respect as far as these kinds of very serious matters. I know that the resolution, had they brought it to the floor, would have at least allowed for further speech. This was something Senator Kavanaugh discussed eloquently, and I don't have the way to describe it as well, but it is true that having this particular result quashed further speech. And the legislature really did miss the boat, I think, with addressing this. And it sounds like, from what other people have mentioned, that there are other actions that Senator Halloran has taken at times that have been uncomfortable or made people very concerning. So it's just sad to me that this is the way it has worked out. I appreciate Senator Kavanaugh for standing up. The piece that was really interesting to me to learn when Senator Wayne was discussing this resolution, he had said something that it should have been called like a point of order immediately that night when it happened, when Senator Halloran was making these remarks. And that is something that we shouldn't need to rely on a process where someone, if they don't speak up right then, that's lost. We saw another senator take advantage of that kind of motion, point of order, this week, though, when Senator Lippincott disputed how Senator Hunt was speaking on the floor of the legislature regarding Senator Kaus. It was just really fascinating to me to see how someone would take it upon themselves to be upset about very mild floor debates regarding such a big topic in relation to what happened the night of Senator Halloran's comments, and no one spoke. I want to say again that I hope the legislators learned how important it is to be careful with how they are talking on the floor of the legislature, because it's for everyone, not just their colleagues, but all the rest of us, the staff that are there, but the rest of us in the second house, our children, everyone who's watching on Nebraska Public Media. And I don't believe in banning books. And I think there's value in books that have topics that are difficult, but we have to also be careful that we don't weaponize those types of passages in books to harass our colleagues. And so I hope that a lesson has been learned and that we won't be facing this again in the legislature going forward.
Or in any workplace for that matter. My
Mhm.
goodness.
Yeah, the leadership was just really disappointing. And again, I just want to say I appreciate Senator Kavanaugh for the courage and to withstand all of this that has happened since. And I'm sure she was getting a lot of pressure to just let it go. And Senator Slama needs to be commended as well, because she was very resolute that this was something that needed to be taken care of as well.
Yes, I agree. Props go where props need to go. Another thing that happened on Wednesday, state lawmakers advanced numerous changes to the Nebraska parole system that the introducer said could take the state from imposing punishment to improving lives. Among many changes in Legislative Bill 631, proposed by State Senator Terrell McKinney of Omaha, it would place parole supervision under the oversight of the Nebraska Department of Correctional Services, limit the reasons the Board of Parole may defer parole, and expand the reasons for which a board member may be removed from the full time position. McKinney told the Nebraska Examiner, the biggest thing to me is just making sure the people inside have better outcomes. Currently, the Board of Parole is an independent board created in the state constitution, oversees the Division of Parole Supervision. Under LB 631, the supervision of paroled inmates would move back under the Nebraska Department of Corrections, where it was prior to 2016. So that's pretty cool to see that bill move forward.
This is very important to our state, not just because we have prison overcrowding, but because there are individuals who we want to make sure when they move from incarceration that they're successful. It's good for our state, it's good for them, it's good for their family. And one of the things that is still very difficult for too many people that are incarcerated in Nebraska's overcrowded system is that they do not have the services necessary so that they can, make their way through some of the requirements to be eligible for parole. So we need to be making sure that we're making that available. And we want people to be successful. We want people to come back to our community and thrive and be people who are contributing. And also, it's important for their family too. I hope that the senators can do better on this. And I can't talk about this topic without also mentioning that I hope at some point we can help Ernest Jackson and his situation. He's been wrongfully convicted of murder, and it is something that for some reason we are not able to, as a state, figure out how to help this individual to escape these incorrect results. I want to put that out there. That is something, if you're not familiar, please do go take a look and familiarize yourself with what's happened to Ernest Jackson. It's just travesty. Mhm.
It is a tragedy. And yes, we do encourage you to look into that story because he has been wrongfully convicted and he still remains in jail to this day. So, moving on to Friday, the door appeared to slam shut on Friday morning on last minute efforts to do away with Nebraska's unique system of awarding the state electoral college votes for president. State Senator John Arsh, Speaker of the Legislature, announced that the time to add bills to other bills was overdue to crush of work required in the waning days of 2024 and revised bills already debated, scheduled for debate. So that's really good to see. I'm not going to lie, I was really nervous that we were going to lose our precious blue dot. And another part of the story that happened earlier this week is that Senator Mike McDonald's slow march toward the Nebraska Republican Party reached its destination on Wednesday. He is now a Republican, but he has committed to protecting the blue dot. So, what are your thoughts on this, Sydney?
There's a lot there. I am an independent. And so, as far as people's participation in various parties in Nebraska, I think people should belong to the party that they believe they best. I am vocal, and I think I have been for a long time, that I disagree with Senator McDonnell on many of his positions, no matter what party he belongs to. And I think that the discussion as far as his move to a different party is not what I'm focused on. I'm more troubled that there are some senators that are saying because of their certain religious beliefs, they believe they should be legislating other people's right away. And that's the part I have a difficulty with. I know there's many very devout senators, not just even here in Nebraska, but just elected officials in general, who may have strong beliefs, but they would not impose them on the things like reproductive freedom for their neighbors or constituents. So that's the part that I have difficulty with. In that, when we talk about quote unquote the blue dot, again, the thing about our electoral college vote is that whether it's blue or red, it gives more franchise to the voters in our state that we elect our president through the electoral college votes splitting based on this type of voting. And it to me is just wild that we have people who at the last minute here are all excited about doing quote unquote winner take all. We could be a state sometime in the future where winner take all would not be benefiting the same party. So I just think that it's a system that has worked very well. It gives more franchise to our state. And since we do unfortunately have to elect our president at this time with the electoral college votes instead of a popular vote, I think we should be putting those votes more directly tied to the actual numbers from these different congressional districts. So I hope that they continue to resist this temptation regarding extreme partisanship, especially coming from like outside the state. There was some turning point event coming up or something where this outsized podcaster person is coming and there's going to be some sort of rally, I think. I don't think that's going to work on the legislators. They actually, I think, have been receiving calls this last week from all over the country. I think they've actually been inundated, and that probably might even backfire with some of the senators, this type of outside pressure. And I even think I read somewhere in one of the news papers about how there was a lot of pressure put on Senator Brewer.
Yeah, Donald Trump apparently called him.
Just yeah. So I believe that we should split our electoral college votes based on the vote within these different congressional districts, no matter what party these votes go to. And I just really hope that the senators resist this outside pressure to spend these last few precious days of our session on kind of extreme policies. I wish they would just roll up their sleeves and get to work on solutions for all of us.
I agree. I agree. So, another thing that went down on Friday, we can celebrate that state lawmakers fell 2 votes short of advancing a proposal that would define K 12 school bathrooms and sporting teams as male or female based on student sex at birth. Legislative Bill 575, the Sports and Spaces Act, introduced by State Senator Kathleen Kauth of Omaha, fell 31 to 15 after 2 conservative lawmakers who originally signed on to the bill when it was introduced last year did not vote for the measures. That would be Senator Tom Brandt of Plymouth and Merv Reapy of Ralston. That was 2 votes short of the 33 votes needed to end the debate on the bill. So, as we were talking about offline, we can take a deep breath, a sigh of relief for the moment. We can't let our guard down completely, but at least for the moment, we can celebrate this good news.
Yes, we've all been really following 575 this whole year. Senator Powell prioritized a bill, but it was stuck in committee all this time. And sounds like that was something that had been arranged with Speaker Arch. It was really frustrating on Thursday to be hearing the news about the committee vote within education senators to advance this to the floor when we couldn't see what the committee statement was or the actual amendment. It wasn't published until very late in the day. It was after 5 o'clock because that was the last time I could look before I was on my way to a different matter. And that was frustrating to me because it's just another signal that the second house and the participation that we have in our legislature is counted or dismissed. I understand why it waited till later in the day. So Senator Wayne was absent and he wanted to make sure his vote was recorded on the committee statement. But because they waited until the last few days of the session, again, this was something that was rushed with being scheduled for the very next morning on debate. I'm going to just say I'm very glad that the senators did not move forward with this bill. It is not good policy for our state. It's not good for our students. It wouldn't be good for our schools. That would be expensive. We just are going around and tying ourselves in knots about property taxes and how we can fund education and where are we going to find dollars to create additional gender inclusive bathrooms? Who's going to monitor chromosomes for where these children are? It was very bad policy. It was extremely disappointing looking at what was in the amendment that it was targeted discrimination against transgender kids in our state. And I'm really glad that the senators decided to not move forward. I think Senator Brandt really had good points about this is just, it was half baked. And Senator Beebe really had some very touching things. He said that he visited with people who this was impacting and actually listened to families. It's too bad Senator Kauth never did, or some of these other senators that were just rigid in trying to bring these extreme policies that are really originating outside of Nebraska and trying to bring it here. So I'm glad that it didn't move forward. I hope that we will elect better representatives to come back to the next session so we don't have to deal with this extremism anymore.
Absolutely. Sydney, as we wrap up this heavy loaded episode today, is there any final words that you have for the people?
I know everyone's tired and it is a long session in that it feels like we've been going and going, but it is a short session number of days, like dog years. I almost feel like we should have some sort of way to describe the Nebraska legislature. So we need to finish strong. Please be in touch with your senators over these last few days. There are so many bills right now still needing to get through select and final reading and to the governor's desk, and ones that we want that we shouldn't be advancing. So make sure to be in touch with your senator. Sometimes it's difficult to follow some of the specific bills. Be in contact with them in a broad way, even, and just letting them know your overall values. And one of the things that I would really say, since we're getting so close to the primary, is to make sure that you double check your voter registration status and make sure and support good candidates who are running for Nebraska legislature, because we want to make sure that we don't have a replay of this last biennium.
And my plug is don't just vote, volunteer. Link up with a campaign, link up with a candidate that you align your values with, knock on some doors, write some postcards, make some phone call or text. I will leave links for you in the show notes for you to be able to find a way to connect and do that. A lot of campaigns are paying $20, $25 an hour for your services, to make phone calls, to knock on doors. So don't have any shame in doing that. If you need a little extra cash, the campaigns raise the money so that they can be able to send people out to the doors and make those calls. And just from a personal experience, I personally love volunteering to knock on doors. It's a really great way to get some exercise, talk to people in the community, and really feel like you're really making an impact with each door that you knock, each conversation that you have, each door that you leave some literature about the candidate in really makes a difference. So that is my
Awesome.
final words. Sydney, thank you so much for joining us again on the Swing Left Nebraska podcast, and look forward to connecting with you next week.
Thank you.
We would like to express our gratitude for tuning in and supporting our podcast. Your engagement and feedback are invaluable to us. We kindly ask that you rate, review, and share our podcast to help reach a wider audience and enable more people to discover the Swing Left Nebraska podcast. If you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss an episode. By subscribing, you'll be notified as soon as we release new content, keeping you up to date with the latest progressive news, interviews, and insights from across the state. Thank you for being a part of our podcast family. Together, we can make a difference and continue to amplify progressive voices in Nebraska. Let's mobilize, let's take action, let's go.
Ready, set, go. Get ready to go. Get ready to go. Get ready to go. Get ready to go.